This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We've come a long way in how we talk about mental health, but there's still work to do. For years, people avoided therapy out of fear or stigma. But here's the truth. Caring for your mental health is just as important as caring for your body. During Mental Health Awareness Month, it's a good time to remember getting support isn't a weakness, it's wise. Therapy can help you set healthy boundaries, manage stress, and show up as the best version of yourself for your loved ones, your work, and your own peace of mind. BetterHelp makes it easier. With over 10 years of experience matching people with therapists who fit their unique needs and a network of more than 30,000 licensed professionals, BetterHelp makes finding support simple and accessible. And if it's not the right fit, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional fee. We're all better with help. Visit betterhelp.com/bestofyou to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/bestofyou. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Allison, and I'm so glad you're here to discover what brings out the best of you. This podcast is all about breaking free from painful patterns, mending the past, and discovering our true selves in God. I can't wait to get started as we learn together how to become the best version of who we are with God's help. Hey everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Best of You podcast. Before we dive into today's episode, just a quick reminder, you can now call in and leave a voicemail to be featured in a future episode. The number is 307-429-2525. We've already heard from so many of you, and it's been incredibly meaningful to connect in this more personal way. You can call with a question, a comment, or simply respond to this prompt. What is one area of your mental, emotional, or spiritual health where you like to grow right now? Just include your first name, where you're calling from, and your message. And if something from today's episode sparks a thought, that's a great place to capture it. Again, the number is 307-429-2525. We'd love to hear from you. Now, on to today's episode. This is one I've been looking forward to for such a long time. I've admired Heather Thompson Day's work from afar for years. Dr. Heather Thompson Day is a gifted storyteller, speaker, best-selling author, and the founder of It Is Day Ministries. Heather has contributed to Christianity Today, Religion News Service, Newsweek, and the Barna Group, and she spent 15 years as a communications professor teaching public speaking, persuasion, and social media. She's the author of several books, including her latest that we're going to get into today. It's called What If I'm Wrong? Navigating the Waves of Fear and Failure. In it, she invites us into the deep, raw, and very human questions that emerge when our circumstances no longer match the faith we thought we had figured out. In this episode, Heather shares honestly about her father's journey with Alzheimer's, how it unraveled her own understanding of God, and the years she spent in what she describes as a kind of spiritual drowning. We talk about grief, identity, the tension between faith and doubt, and how the experience of suffering became a catalyst for a more honest, grounded relationship with God. This isn't a story of neat answers or tidy theology. It's a story of holding on, even when you're not sure what it is you're holding on to. It's a story about the power of questions, the importance of honoring what hurts, and the miracle of discovering a God who never left. Whether you're in a season of wrestling or just hungry for a faith that can hold the full weight of real life, I think this episode will speak to you. Please enjoy my conversation with the brilliant and beautifully honest Heather Thompson Day. I've known of you, I've seen your work, and so I just love, for me, this is such a great opportunity to get to know someone who I have admired from afar. I feel like we've kind of circled around each other, but never actually connected. And so I'm just thrilled to get to meet you today and get to have this conversation with you. So I want to start, though, Heather, because you actually had me kind of just in that first chapter, just like, oh boy, really? You're going to do this to me because I have a dad who's 83. You start off telling us about your dad and his battle with Alzheimer's. Tell me a little bit about why is this the way you started off this book where you're really exploring fear and failure?
That story is the defining story of what feels like most of my adult life. Everything that I do. I was deeply impacted by my dad as a child, which I talk about in the book. My dad was the same man in his basement as he was when he was on stage. And I grew up in a van going with him from church to church to church, not even just the country. We went internationally too. And so I was always in the room where the Holy Spirit moved. And so I never doubted whether God was real. I've never had that journey. I always knew God was real because I saw him in my dad. It was God and my dad felt very close. And so when my dad got Alzheimer's, now that was a different story because all of a sudden then I started to not question whether God was real, but question whether I understood who God was.
You're saying something so important. Let's just hit the ground running in terms of attachment, right? So much that primary attachment figure becomes our vision of who God is, which could be a wonderful thing for some people. That's actually why they have a hard time trusting God because they're like, well, this person didn't model God well. In your case, it was a beautiful, like, of course God is real. Of course God loves me. And then also that was when your dad starts to be taken from you, so does also that image of God, that understanding of God.
Yes. And it wasn't just the disease, it was the state that it left our family in. My dad gave his entire life financially to ministry. Every dollar he made, he always poured back in. And so here we were trying to figure out how do we afford a nursing home? And I can't even tell you the bitterness that came up when I started to feel like, okay, he gave his whole life to you, God, and you can't even make sure that he has a nursing home. That was very complicated and to be honest, I'm still working through those pieces, especially because my dad always said we barely talked about the Alzheimer's while he could still cognitively discuss it because he always said, God's going to take care of me. God's going to take care of me. Don't worry about it. And we believed him. And then came the time where that doesn't feel true anymore. Right. So what do I do with my image of God now? And so that it was like a 3-year journey of me in therapy. And that's when I'm writing the book is, yeah, what do we do in this space where my image of God feels as though it could be wrong? And I'll just say this too, because I know somebody right now is feeling frustrated that I'm even talking so negatively. So let me say this. I sent a text to my mom, and this is in chapter 1. And I said to her, it feels like dad gave his entire life to ministry and he has nothing to show for it. And my mom texts me back 59 minutes later, though her read receipt said she had read it immediately. And she said, you say dad has nothing to show for it. Heather, he has you to show for it. I think you're wrong. And from that, I started to zoom out. And this is like a 3-year journey, but I started to zoom out and say, what if this life is not just about me? What if God is answering prayers that my dad prayed in my life? Like, what if this thing is more than our singular experience and we're actually a part of a much larger, bigger, global family?
Connectedness,
Yes.
that God taking care of your dad might look differently than what you had thought. And I appreciate your foreshadowing, kind of the end of the story. And I also just want to say, again, from a parts perspective, so we talk a lot on the podcast about different parts. That's the model from which I work, this internal family systems parts. Everything you're saying makes sense. A part of you, right? That's what I love about that model. It's complicated. A part of you is mad. But again, you're trying to fill out a larger story that accounts for all of what you're experiencing, including a little bit of the frustration or a little bit of the doubt. That, to me, in that space makes sense. But let's go to the fact that because you talk about this in the book, you went to see a counselor. You specifically chose to see a counselor who was not Christian. Tell us a little bit about that choice and why that was important to you.
My world is very Christian insulated. I worked at a Christian campus. I work in ministry. Some of my best mentors are literally, I think, have prophetic gifts. I am surrounded by wise Christian counsel. But my issue that I was struggling with had to do with whether or not my dad was, I say this in the book, there's a fine line between faith and delusion. And I didn't know what side my dad was on. And so then I didn't know what side I was on anymore. And so I wanted somebody who would tell me the truth and not spiritualize it. And I went to my non-Christian counselor, and it was such a beautiful 3 years that we spent together. And she was much less antagonistic to my faith. I was not prepared. I thought she'd be like, this is silly. No, she was like, how has your hope hurt you? You know what I mean? She's like, it seems as though you're living a really beautiful life. And I said, wow, okay, I needed to hear that.
It's really interesting. It's such an interesting choice. I've done the same thing in my own life for what it's worth. And the question will come up on the podcast, should I always have a Christian therapist? And my answer is not necessarily, but that diverges from what some other people will say. And the reason that I say that is that, similar to your point, I will say to people, you don't want to see someone who has an agenda with you, who's trying to shame you or talk you out of something. That's not the job of a therapist. But the job of a therapist is to hold up a mirror and help you understand your own self and your own faith better, more objectively. And it sounds like for you, it's like, I'm almost going to trust this person more if they're asking me questions without any sort of preconceived idea about what the answer should be.
Yes.
And she was respectful. That's the piece that's important.
She was incredible. And you know what? She was like fresh out of school. We just had such a good dynamic because I think she was like hungry to be in there doing the work. And I lucked out and got her.
I love, though, that you were intentional about noticing this is going on with what's going on with my dad is affecting me. It's not just grief. It's actually affecting me spiritually, psychologically, and spiritually. I'm going to get support. I'm going to get support very intentionally. And tell us a little bit about what some of that rumble was, Heather, with doubt and faith and how this sounds cliche, but it's almost as if you went through another iteration of figuring out how to make your faith, your spirituality, your own, even to another degree, separating it from your dad's.
That's exactly what I was doing, actually, now that you say that. Yes, that's exactly what I was doing. I needed to know who I was. There's so many things that have helped me discover that. And I will say this to whoever's listening, for me, knowing who I am has changed everything. Knowing who I am and who God is, because my circumstances no longer have to reveal to me what I know to be true about who I am. And this is a new area of life that I've ever been in, that I get to walk right now. And I don't think I could be here until I had nothing in my circumstances to affirm anything about who I was. Nothing was working. It felt like everything I was touching was failing.
Give us an example.
Yeah. So a big thing that I talk about in there was my dream, right? So the book is about passion and how the word passion actually biblically means to suffer. So a lot of times we say, I'm doing this because I'm passionate about it. And it's like, well, no, we like affirmation and we like accolades and we like resources and open doors. Passion is what you cannot stop doing despite not receiving any of those things. What are you willing to suffer for and through? And so for me, I had said, oh, I'm a writer. And then the suffering started, right? Then books aren't selling in the same way that the last book sold. I think my first book that I did sold 5,000 copies in like a week. This last book, I'll See You Tomorrow, sold 511 copies in the first week. So I had done, it just felt like, oh my goodness, I'm a failure. And that's the only thing I've ran from. I got a PhD by the time I was 31. I have tried so hard to go the opposite of what I saw my dad do. My dad went all in with no safety net on just ministry and calling and passion. And so I said, I'm going to get as many degrees as possible to make sure I can have a stable, safe, financial life. And then it still wasn't happening. And I'm writing the book that I felt like God called me to write, and it's not selling. I had to come to a place where I separated myself from the work too.
Once the temperatures started rising, I realized I was back in the same worn-out rotation. Same t-shirt, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform a little summer glow-up with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. I picked up a pair of their linen shorts, a breezy linen dress, and the Italian leather platform sandals, and I'm honestly blown away. The quality feels so high-end, but the prices are unbelievably reasonable. We're talking luxe swimwear and linen staples starting at just $30. I loved their 100% European linen button front dress so much. I bought it in 3 different colors. It's that perfect mix of stylish and effortless. I'll throw it on for work, then keep it on for errands or a casual dinner. It's comfortable, breathable, and just works for everything. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/bestofyou for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/bestofyou to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/bestofyou. There's so much in what you just said. First of all, passion as suffering. Wow, nobody thinks about it that way. And probably you didn't when you went in with all this gusto.
Right. This is how I came to it. I started trying to figure out what's happening.
Yeah, feeling like a failure, even though you'd worked really hard to not fail, in air quotes, the same way that you saw your dad. In some ways, maybe he didn't fail spiritually, but financially, there was challenges. So despite your best efforts, experiencing the very things you were trying to avoid. And so all of this, your dad getting sick, you questioning God, you wrestling with these failures, quote unquote, lead you to this place where you feel like you're drowning. Tell us a little bit about that before we get to the good news, because I want my listeners who are feeling that to be with us on this journey.
Yeah, it wasn't just a feeling, it was chasing me. I was waking up in the night with nightmares of I'm drowning, where I'm trying to get to the top of the water and somebody keeps pulling me back down. And I'm somebody who writes everything down. I started this practice many years ago where whatever I'm praying or experiencing, I write it down and I put dates. And I'm trying to watch God's involvement in my life. So I want to see dates. And what I found by keeping dates is that oftentimes God will keep an anniversary with me that I forgot. So he will answer a prayer, sometimes maybe 3 days, but sometimes 3 years or 10 years to the day that I prayed it, to the day, right? I have long since forgotten. And then I'll go back and I'll go through my notes and I say, oh my goodness, God remembered. And so I'm having all this experience of dreams of drowning. I'm talking to my therapist. And for the first time, I'm talking with my family because we didn't talk about it, about my dad's Alzheimer's. We acted as if we didn't say the word. I need you to understand, my mom didn't tell her work. My dad had Alzheimer's for probably 12 years. Her work didn't know until like a year ago. Even me writing this stuff in the book, I could tell she was like, not one. And I'm at this point, my dad's almost not even remembering anybody's names. Like you would catch now that he has Alzheimer's, right? He could fake it for a long time. Nobody knows. So we were living in this really strange place. So for the first time, I start even talking about it with my own mom. This was a big thing too. I was very afraid about who I would be. This is going to make me cry. When my dad wasn't there to confirm it because he believed in me. I mean, my dad took me to writing lessons when I was 15 years old. He was a dreamer. And when I got expelled from school in 8th grade from my Christian school.
Oh, I want to hear that story, but keep going.
Yeah, I got expelled from school. And I just had such a hard time in middle school because I was very opinionated and I didn't yet fully understand not to share unless people ask. So I was always giving everybody my opinions. I was probably quite obnoxious, but it was very difficult for a Christian school, a small Christian school, conservative school, to handle in a female. And so I was always getting in trouble and kids didn't like me. And I just remember going home and just crying. Like this one time, these girls left these secret admirer notes for me for several days. And one day the note said, meet me at the fence. So I go to the fence and it's 3 girls laughing, right? Not this boy that I think is my secret admirer. And so I go home. I just need people to understand who my dad was for me. I'm pedal biking home and I get home and I slam the door and I crawl under my bed and I'm just sobbing. And I can remember my dad coming into the room, sitting on the bed and saying, what's wrong? And I tell him and he's like, Heather, you're going to be somebody. I know it. I see there is something in you. I'm just telling you, God is calling you to something. And for so much of my life, I only believed that because my dad had said it. And so without him there to say it, when my dad doesn't know my name anymore, who am I? And I remember my therapist said, like everything your dad has put into your life, that doesn't leave when he's gone. That stays. And that was a light bulb for me because I just kept thinking about what I'm going to lose. And then I realized I'm not going to lose any of the things that he's given me.
Yeah. It's in you. It's in you. It's actually internalized inside of you, but parts of you didn't know that. Man, that's powerful.
Yeah. So I was drowning and I'm still treading water. I would not right now be like, I'm a strong swimmer. No, I feel like I have better tools now. I know, okay, go on a walk, call somebody and tell them that you're struggling, go to sleep. I have tools to navigate the situations that I'm in that I don't think I had before. I was using a lot of perfectionism to just numb.
Gosh, it makes so much sense again from an attachment perspective that safety you felt with your dad that in many ways gave you a positive image of a loving God also didn't fully get remapped onto God and then almost even anger with God for taking that away from you.
Now I need to meet with you after, right? Because it's like, wait a second. And then when I'm losing my dad, I'm losing my image of God. And so now, oh my goodness, it's almost like I had to go through this rebirthing experience and childhood, growing up and learning how to walk with God on my own.
That's profound. But that process, it makes sense to me, would have sent you into the drowning.
Yes.
I've lost God almost.
I lost a God who saved me like my dad saved me because he wasn't jumping in and saving me. And my dad did. And what do
So
we do
who's
with
this
a God?
God?
Yes. Who are you?
Oh, man. I can just feel that. So you go and ask these questions. This is the title of the book. What if I'm wrong? Is it what if I'm wrong about God? Is that kind of where this questioning, what if I'm wrong? That seems to summarize this drowning experience.
Yeah. So Martin B. Copenhaver did some work and he found that Jesus asked far more questions than he gave answers. Of the 183 questions he is asked, he only directly answers 3. Okay. So I had lived a life being told God gives you the answer. And now I'm in a season where I'm not getting any answers. And so what I found were questions. And then I did all this research to try to understand what am I experiencing? And I realized actually, God is far more comfortable with questions than answers. God, who has all the answers, comes to earth and doesn't feel the need to give us them. Jesus, who could have written his own gospel, would have taken very little for Jesus to sit down and pen something directly from his hand, and he doesn't do it. He allows his story to be told through his people. He allows us to sit and ask questions and wonder. And so I just realized I'm going to have to get comfortable with a God who believes questions are more important than answers.
Disorienting, and has in some ways created a wound or a hurt in terms of this person you love so much. I mean, I get it. It just makes so much sense. So through this process of getting comfortable with the questions, what were some key moments, some key lifelines that sort of made you kind of be able to come up out of the drowning?
It just kind of felt like drowning. And then I had one breakthrough that made me realize I was never drowning. That's honestly what happened. And I tell the story at the very end of the book. Long story short, the same days that I'm writing in my prayer journal, God, where are you? God, don't you see me? God, I have no money in my bank account. God, what am I supposed to do? There was somebody that God had sent into my life. I just didn't know who they were, but they had been talking to me. And anyway, that person at the end of the book ends up providing for me in a way, literally is funding my entire salary for this year. Multi-millionaire that had found me on Twitter. Just another crazy story, but that's for the end of the book. But then I realized, oh my goodness, the entire time that I said, God, where are you? He was right there all along. I had been talking to this woman the entire 3 years. I just didn't know who she was, right? But she had been encouraged. I wrote about her. I wrote her words in my prayer journal with the date. No idea that she was going to end up feeling stirred by God to pour into my ministry financially. I had no idea. This is what I'm saying about my circumstances. I don't need my circumstances to reveal what I know to be true about who I am and who God is. I know that God is here. I know that God loves me. And actually, I know for a fact that God is with me. And if my circumstances don't reveal it, I'm going to hold on and I'm going to wait.
Because you had that experience of literally after 3 years, it's almost like the clouds lifting, you going, oh, there he was all along.
All along, as I am telling him, you must not be powerful, because if you were, you'd help me. Something is not right here. And he allowed me to think, to just thrash and then realize, oh my God, I'm swimming. This is just what it feels like to swim for 18 hours in tough current and strong waves. This is just life.
Yeah, and so much of it is the wrestling.
Right. The questions.
It sure is. And it's not giving up on
And
the
it
questions.
doesn't mean that I've done anything wrong.
Exactly.
And in my search for answers, for perfect little Christian answers that I had needed, and that worked for me in my past until they didn't, God had provided answers much quicker. This experience was 3 years where I didn't get answers and things just kept getting stripped away. My podcast, which was another line of income for me, stopped growing and we had to cancel that. My book then didn't sell. Then my university is talking about, they're going through financial hardship. So they're talking about renegotiating my contract. Literally everything that was my safety net that I had built with all my hard work and degrees was being stripped away from me. And for God to have been with me through that entire thing all the time, that I finally see at the end, I'll never be the same. I'll never be the same. And he's my God now.
My dad tells the best stories, and whenever he tells one, I'm wishing we could bottle it up. And that's why I want to make Father's Day extra special this year, and I found the perfect gift. It's Storyworth Memoirs. Here's how it works. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved one a thoughtful question, something you helped choose, like, what was your first job? Or tell about a time you got in trouble in school. All they have to do is reply with a story. No apps, no tech confusion, just a simple email. And you'll get those stories delivered straight to your inbox each week. At the end of the year, Storyworth compiles all those stories and even photos into a beautiful hardcover keepsake book. We did this with my mom, and we love flipping through the pages and sharing in some of the memories that she captured in her book. This kind of legacy is priceless. Storyworth has over 40,000 five-star reviews, and it truly is the gift that keeps on giving. Give the dads in your life a meaningful gift you'll all cherish. Right now, save $10 during their Father's Day sale at storyworth.com/bestofyou. That's storyworth.com/bestofyou to save $10 on your order. To me, this is the literal definition of a miracle. We want the miracle, and the miracle is the lifeline now, or the answer now. But the miracle is that you kept thrashing about in the water for 3 years and were willing to ask the hard questions and to sit in this pain and to suffer amidst passions and things that were not your fault long enough to then see.
And I'm just going to tell you, I will say this. I never stopped praying. And some of my prayers were angry. Like I said, you must not be who I think you are. But I never left the room. I just remember Annie saying to me one day, it was raining. And I was like, I'm not going to go on a prayer walk today because it's raining. She's like, you're going to let a little rain stop you from experiencing God? I was like, no, I'm not. And I went. And so I learned for the first time. I've always done prayer walks, but in Michigan, that's where I lived. When it was winter, I didn't go because I'm not crazy, right? It's cold. No, it's dark. There's tons of ice. No, for those 3 years, I walked every winter, and something was born within me in the winter that I could not have experienced, I think, in any other season. And now I get to take that with me, I hope, Lord, new seasons.
Yes and amen. I love how you draw upon that work of wintering.
I only read that here because in that season, somebody on Instagram said, I think you're wintering. You should read this book. I read it. Oh my goodness. What a beautiful book.
Such a helpful naming of that season. Heather, I want to just touch on just how you came to terms with failure. The word itself, I think we could turn on its head because so much of what you described happening was it wasn't even failure in the sense of it was just things were being stripped away out of your control. But we experience it as failing. How did you come to terms with that? You're a woman who's very capable, who's done some amazing things. Not only what does that do to your faith, but how did you come to terms with that in terms of your self-concept?
I think, well, part of it, like I let it be. Again, this was a 3-year process. So I remember days where I really struggled to get out of bed. And then I read Necessary Endings. That was very helpful to me too, to start saying, oh, maybe this isn't a failure. Maybe this is a necessary ending, right? So vocabulary for me as a communication professor, that really helps my brain say, oh, I'm having an inappropriate relationship with this word. So now this new word is helping me reframe. I said this to somebody else in an interview and I think I offended them because they like corrected me. So I'm just going to say it and it might offend somebody, but I'm just going to tell you what I experienced. I felt like I did let go of God. I think God did not let go of me. He did not let go of me. And so that got me through. I really think he carried me through. I'm just telling you, if we're on the merit system that I wanted God to operate under with my dad, I no longer received the merit because I said some really nasty things to God. I kept praying, but I also just said things that I was taught you never say to God. And he just loved me through it. I'll say this too, this language in my brain as a writer, this was helpful. In my brain, I always thought the good part of the story is what happens to you, right? The hero goes through difficulty, but then something beautiful happens or a miracle comes and now it's a good story. Okay. The Lord revealed to me, that's not the story. You are the story. So a heart that remains soft despite circumstances that are hard, that's a beautiful story. It doesn't mean that the circumstances ever change. I don't have to have God bless me in order to choose to bring blessing to other people. I don't have to have God be good to me in order to choose to bring goodness. And that is a blessing that only belongs to the righteous. The wicked would never perceive of doing such a thing. Blessing and goodness is available to me at any time. And if I partake in that, that's a beautiful story. And so I started living as if the story was just my response, not what happens, which I can't control.
It's a paradox. You're saying something really deep. It's in the sense it's like I'm letting go of old God, and I don't know what bigger God is. But to me, that is the essence of faith. It's almost like calling God, I'm going to keep doing what I know to be true, even if you are not who I thought you were, God. To me, that's faith. And to me also, when you think about the parenting model, you think about a good parent, which is what you were rumbling with in many ways. A good parent, you think about parenting a teenager or a young adult. A lot of times they are pushing off of you. That is part of the deal. And a good parent is sometimes knows when to be like, you just keep pushing. That's what you need to do right now. And I'm here. And I'm not going to let this connection be broken. But I'm big enough for this, right? But it doesn't feel that way from where you are. You feel like, I got to let this go. God's like, okay, you do that. He's not offended by that.
Yes, he was not offended.
Not easily offendable, God.
But that's not what I was taught. I'm not saying by my dad, but I'm saying by the system that I was raised in, the church that I went to, the school system that expelled me. That's not what I was taught. I was taught just by what I saw, God very easily gets offended and we have to protect it.
Yeah. And gosh, Heather, this is where we could go into so many different directions because I'm curious how your faith journey is now. This is where to me, this is just good psychological development. This is the overlap where I think the church gets so caught up in kind of keeping us young. And we're not breaking out of anything. It's just, listen, if you've parented young adults, this is what happens. And your job as a parent shifts. And God designed this, so God knows this. We have not changed, but our kids' experiences of us change. They think they need us less. They actually, in some ways, need us more, but the way they need us is different. They're asking different questions. They're trying to differentiate. This is all healthy. But in the church, it's almost like we try to keep people fearful. And God is so much bigger than that. So I really love that you were brave enough. I think some of that part of you, that in middle school was willing to, call a spade, was brave enough to be like, I got to be true here, God.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the work that we do, right? It's like authenticity is very important to me. And right. And so how do I keep talking to people about something if I'm struggling to believe? So yeah, I needed to go on this journey so that I can stay true and authentic in the ways that I serve.
What does your faith journey look like now on the other side of this 3 years?
I feel like I'm learning. I'm still learning. I just had a difficult thing last week, but it was interesting because he followed it up with like the opposite. So somebody modeled for me something that was kind of painful, but then literally 3 days later, in a similar experience, somebody modeled for me something that was like above and beyond anything I deserve or should have asked. And I just said, okay, you're revealing to me the type of person I want to be. Like I want to live the way this second person responded to me. I'm looking at life right now as if there's so much to learn, but I'm hoping to end up in a more joyful state because I've been very serious about God for a long time. And now I want to find that joy in being, and laughing. Sometimes that's hard for me because I'm somebody that like, I'm a feeler. So if I see other people drowning, it feels like, should I even be happy right now if there's, So I'm learning this balance and I feel called into joy. That is what I'm feeling called into, and to know this side of God now.
As God's beloved daughter.
Yes.
Again, we're not.
Right.
But just in that experience of, I do have a good father. I want to read this, Heather, because this is toward the end of the book. You said a month ago, my mom realized my dad didn't know who she was. They've been married over 40 years. That's what Alzheimer's will do to a once perfectly happy family. It will make you forget that you are ever perfect or all that happy. I just know I love you, he told her when she asked him who she was. And then you map it onto your own journey. When you don't know who God is anymore, when you don't know what your dreams are or what passion you're willing to keep suffering through, when you can't remember whether you're in option B or option 142, I hope those words are all that remain. Lord, I just know that I love you. When all is stripped away from us as bony Christians, may that be all that's true. Here is what remains. I don't even know that I know you anymore, God, and I know that I love you. I mean, that's just so powerful.
That came, I remember I was on a prayer walk. It was this last winter. I just remember saying that out loud. I said, I don't know anything anymore, but here's what I do know. And I know that this has to be true because there's no circumstances that would make it true other than it's within me. I know I love you. And I know I'm going to keep showing up to be in this relationship with you. And it's not about what you can give me. And it's not about what I think I've earned. It just is.
Even when I don't get it, I sometimes think about it when I kind of, everything kind of falls by the wayside and I can't make sense of anything. And I'm like, and here is God. Here is God still. But I love that. And I still love you. I'm still here. It's so beautiful. And the power of even that literal sense of your dad not exactly recognizing your mom anywhere, but I still love you.
Man, I've just learned so much from even watching this phase of him in Alzheimer's, because that's what he was telling her is, I know I love you. I just don't have the words anymore to say who you are, but my heart recognizes you. I mean, what a beautiful piece of just life and humanity in this really horrible situation that I get to keep. Another piece that I get to keep with me long after he'll be gone.
This goes without saying, but I just feel so much of God's delight in you and in you telling this story, in your father's delight in you and in you telling this story. I love the story that you've told through this book. I think it's going to help a lot of people who
I do hope so.
Go through this. We don't talk about it enough. How do you let go of your faith and keep your faith? It feels like we've got these two options, I can just burn the thing down, or I can kind of fight for it and wrestle, maybe not even fight for it, at times let it go, and God still remains. It's just such an important offering. So tell everyone where they can find the book and find your work and connect with you.
Yeah. Hey, What If I'm Wrong? Wherever books are sold, heatherthompsonday.com. My website has everything to connect with me and book links and all of that.
It's just a beautiful journey, and I appreciate your sharing it with us.
Thank you so much for letting me share it.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of The Best of You. It would mean so much if you take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts and click the plus or follow button. That will ensure you don't miss an episode, and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you leave your 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday. And remember, as you become the best of who you are, you honor God, you heal others, and you stay true to your God-given self.